Some stories are hidden in plain sight. You walk by them, unaware of the secrets they carry. This is one of those stories. A family's legacy, long-standing and full of pride, shattered in ways no one could have predicted. It began with something so ordinary, a family visit. Two teenage boys sent to spend a few weeks with their grandmother while their parents were away. A chance to reconnect, to share memories, to simply be together. But in that house, something else was waiting, something no one saw anticipated. Vivica Evans had been alone for years, her husband gone, her children grown, her home now quiet in ways that unsettled her. But she never expected this. She never imagined that the reunion she had longed for would lead to, well, something far more complicated. And when her grandsons, Caden and Kieran, stepped through her door, everything changed. At first it was calm and gently, a shift in the air, a discomfort that was easy to dismiss. But as the days passed, the tension grew. Things that should have been simple, shared meals, casual conversations, became something else. Something that made Vivica question everything she thought she knew about family, about herself. Caden and Kieran, the twin grandsons she hadn't seen in years, were no longer the boys she remembered. They had grown.
Sandra Harris had built an enviable life. She was at the pinnacle of her career. Her interior design firm was renowned. The awards lined her office walls. Yet behind the success, Sandra harbored a deep loneliness. Years of focusing on her career had taken a toll. Her marriage had crumbled. Sandra longed for companionship. Sandra poured her energy into her work. It was her refuge, her solace. She had a keen eye for detail, a natural talent for transforming spaces. Her clients adored her. They praised her professionalism and creativity, but no amount of professional acclaim could fill the void in her personal life. Sandra yearned for someone to share her life with, someone to confide in, to laugh with, to love. Her friends urged her to try online dating. Reluctantly, Sandra agreed. Little did she know her search for love would lead her into a dangerous web of deceit. Jamal Preston's profile seemed too good to be true. He was handsome, charming, and successful. He claimed to be a renowned architect. His profile picture showed a man with a dazzling smile and kind eyes. Jamal messaged Sandra first. His words were poetic, filled with compliments and shared interests. He seemed captivated by her intelligence and drive. Their online conversations quickly blossomed. Jamal was a master conversationalist. He listened attentively as Sandra spoke about her work, her dreams, her fears. He offered words of support and encouragement. Soon they were talking on the phone for hours each night. Jamal's voice was smooth and soothing, washing away Sandra's doubts. He seemed to understand her like no one ever had. He showered her with attention, sending her flowers and thoughtful gifts. Within weeks, Jamal expressed his desire to meet in person. Sandra was hesitant at first, but Jamal was persistent, his words dripping with sincerity. He swept her off her feet, making her feel special and adored. Sandra, blinded by his charm and the promise of love, agreed to meet him. Their first date was a whirlwind of romance.
Something far more complicated. And when her grandsons, Caden and Kieran, stepped through her door, everything changed. At first it was calm and gently, a shift in the air, a discomfort that was easy to dismiss. But as the days passed, the tension grew. Things that should have been simple, shared meals, casual conversations, became something else. Something that made Vivica question everything she thought she knew about family, about herself. Caden and Kieran, the twin grandsons she hadn't seen in years, were no longer the boys she remembered. They had grown into young men, bold and confident in ways that made her uncomfortable, but she couldn't quite put her finger on why. Perhaps it was their presence, or perhaps it was something deeper. 2 weeks. That's all it was supposed to be. 2 weeks together, and then life would return to normal. But sometimes 2 weeks can change everything. Sometimes what seems innocent can quickly become something far more dangerous. a grandmother, her grandsons, and a secret that tore them apart. So what happens when the lines we trust are crossed? When the ties that bind us unravel in ways we never expected? This is the story of a family, and the secret that would tear them apart. A secret that should have never existed. Trust, love, family. How far can they be stretched before they break? And when they do, who is left to pick up the pieces? Stay with us, because this is where the nightmare truly begins. Vivica Evans, a name once spoken with pride, a woman known for her resilience, for her strength. Now in her late 60s, Vivica has lived a life full of love, loss, and most recently, solitude. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when her home was alive with the sounds of laughter and conversation. A time when she was surrounded by family, friends, and the man she loved most in this world. Her husband, Jonas. For over a decade, Vivica has lived in the shadow of her husband's absence. Jonas was her rock, the one person who made everything feel steady, no matter how turbulent life became. They had built a life together, one filled with memories, children, and eventually grandchildren. But when Jonas passed away, something shifted in Vivica. The home they had once shared became quiet. Too quiet. Vivica had been raised in a strict household, a place where morality and family values were instilled from a young age. Her parents had taught her to always put family first, to honor those bonds, and to live with integrity. She had carried those lessons with her all her life, through her marriage, through raising her children, and even now as a grandmother. But as the years dragged on after Jonas's death, that once firm sense of right and wrong began to blur. Loneliness is a powerful force. It sneaks in quietly at first, just a whisper in the back of your mind. But then, as the days turn into weeks and the weeks into years, it becomes louder. It becomes harder to ignore. Vivica's once vibrant social life had withered away, and she found herself spending most of her days alone in a house that felt far too big for one person. And in that solitude, her longing for companionship grew. And so did her vulnerability. But then came the visit. A chance to break the cycle of loneliness, if only for a short time. Her grandsons, Caden and Kieran, were coming to stay with her. She hadn't seen them in years, not since they were boys. Now, at 17, they were young men, twin brothers, identical in appearance, though each with their own distinct personality. Caden and Kieran Evans, athletic, mischievous, sons of diplomats, they had been raised in a privileged home with all the opportunities that life could offer. But with their parents often away on assignments, the twins had grown up faster than most. They were used to having their independence, used to pushing boundaries. And when they arrived at their grandmother's house, they brought that same boldness with them. Alicia and Devin Evans had built their lives around diplomacy, a life of travel, duty, and constant assignments. They were used to being apart, to one of them leaving for a time while the other stayed behind to manage things at home. But this time was different. A special assignment had come up, one that required both of them to be overseas, away from their sons for 2 weeks. It wasn't ideal, but they had done it before, leaving the boys with friends or trusted caregivers. But this time, there was only one option. Alicia's mother, Vivica, the grandmother who hadn't seen the boys in years. On the surface, it seemed perfect. A chance for the twins to reconnect with the woman who had played such a big role in raising Alicia. A chance for Vivica to break out of the isolation that had haunted her for so long. But Alicia, she wasn't so sure. There was hesitation. A part of her that worried. She trusted her mother, but there was something about leaving her teenage sons with Vivica for an extended time that made her uneasy. Vivica and Alicia had always had a complicated relationship. the kind of mother-daughter bond that was both close and distant at the same time. They loved each other deeply, but there were things left unsaid. Years of tension buried beneath polite conversation. Vivica had been strict, maybe too strict, while Alicia was growing up. She had instilled in her daughter the same strong moral values she had been raised with. But now, years later, Alicia sometimes questioned if that strictness had left scars. So when the opportunity came to leave the boys with her mother, Alicia hesitated. She knew her mother loved the twins, but there was a small voice in the back of her mind telling her this wasn't the right choice. Something about the timing, about the boy's age, about her mother's long years of loneliness. But in the end, the choice was made. It was supposed to be good for everyone. Time for Vivica to bond with her grandsons, time for Alicia and Devin to focus on their work. She convinced herself it was the best decision. Alicia and Devin left on their trip. Their sons, Caden and Kieran, settled into their grandmother's home. It was only 2 weeks after all. What could possibly go wrong? But Alicia had no idea that in those 2 weeks her family would be changed forever. Vivica was excited, more excited than she had been in years. The chance to see her grandsons again, to have them with her in the house, it felt like a gift. She had missed them so much, and the thought of spending time with them filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. But when she saw them, really saw them, something inside her shifted. The boys were no longer the small children she had once cared for. They had grown into young men, tall, strong, confident in their bodies in a way that took Vivica by surprise. It wasn't just their size, it was the way they carried themselves, the way they seemed so comfortable in their skin. They walked around the house as if they owned it, lounging in tight, revealing clothing, their bare chests on display. At first, Vivica didn't know how to react. She told herself it was nothing, that it was normal for boys their age, but the discomfort was there, gnawing at her. She asked them to cover up. She tried to set boundaries. But the boys didn't seem to listen. They shrugged it off, continued lounging around the house in the same way. Vivica told herself it was just boys being boys, but deep down she knew there was more to it. She felt something she wasn't ready to confront. It had been over 10 years since her husband passed away. 10 long years of solitude, of sleeping alone in a bed that once held 2. Vivica had done her best to stay strong, to keep herself busy. But loneliness has a way of creeping in, of filling the empty spaces in your life until it's all you can feel. And now, with her grandsons in the house, something she had long buried began to rise to the surface. At first, it was just a thought, a fleeting moment of recognition, acknowledging that her grandsons had grown into attractive young men, that they were no longer the children she remembered. But as the days passed, that thought began to grow, to fester. Vivica couldn't stop it. She tried to push it away, but the more time she spent with the boys, the harder it became to ignore. There were moments, small moments, that made her question herself. The way they looked at her, the way they smiled, the way their bodies moved. It was all so casual, so innocent, but to Vivica, it felt different. She could feel her own discomfort, her own attraction growing, and it terrified her. This wasn't right. These were her grandsons. But the loneliness was stronger than she realized. As the days passed, Vivica found herself caught in an internal battle. She wanted to be the loving grandmother, the one who cared for her grandsons, who bonded with them in a way that only family can. But the longer they stayed, the more conflicted she became. She didn't want to admit it, but she could feel the lines between right and wrong beginning to blur. And with every passing day, the weight of that conflict grew heavier. She didn't know how to stop it. She didn't know if she even could. and as she watched her grandsons move through her house, so confident, so carefree, she couldn't help but wonder. Was it too late? Had something already shifted between them? The answer was coming, and it would change everything. It was a warm evening, the kind that made the house feel almost too quiet. Vivica sat in her chair, trying to read, but the words on the page blurred as her mind wandered. She could hear them in the next room, the twins, Caden and Kieran, their laughter echoing through the house as they wrestled playfully. It was a sound she used to cherish, the sound of youth, of life filling the home. But now, as she listened, it stirred something else in her. Something she couldn't quite understand. Something she didn't want to. She glanced toward the living room where they tussled, their young bodies moving with a confidence that made her uneasy. They had grown so much since she had last seen them, no longer boys but young men, tall, strong, and full of energy. Their bare skin, glistening from the heat of the evening, caught her eye. She tried to look away, tried to focus on the book in her hands, but her gaze kept drifting back. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stop watching. Vivica felt her chest tighten with guilt. These were her grandsons. She had raised them, loved them, and yet here she was, unable to shake the discomfort growing inside her. It was as though a line had been crossed, but not by them. It was her. She was the one who had let her mind slip into a place it had no right to be. She told herself to stop, to get up, to leave the room. But her legs felt heavy, rooted to the floor, her eyes still fixed on the scene before her. The boys, unaware of the storm brewing in their grandmother's mind, continued their playful battle. But there was something about the way they moved, something deliberate. Their laughter came easily, their bodies pressed against each other as they wrestled. But beneath the surface there was a new awareness, a shift.
Jamal arrived at the restaurant with a bouquet of lilies, Sandra's favorite. He was everything she had hoped for, charming, attentive, and witty. He listened intently as she spoke, her heart fluttering under his gaze. Over candlelight and fine wine he painted a picture of their future together, a future filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. As weeks turned into months, Jamal became a fixture in Sandra's life. He was a constant presence, showering her with affection and expensive gifts. He met her friends and charmed them with his charisma. Sandra, completely smitten, believed she had finally found the love she had been searching for. She introduced him to her daughter Kira, but a seed of doubt lingered in Kira's perceptive eyes. Behind the facade of the perfect boyfriend, Jamal was weaving a web of manipulation. He began hinting at financial difficulties, a temporary setback for his architectural firm. Sandra, blinded by love and eager to help, offered him a loan. He was hesitant at first, playing the role of the proud man unwilling to accept help. But Sandra insisted, her love clouding her judgment. It was the first step in Jamal's calculated plan to bleed her dry. Section 4. Echoes of the Past, the Shadow of Prior Victims. Jamal was a master manipulator, his entire life a carefully constructed act. His real name was Jeremy, and he had a long history of preying on vulnerable women. He would shower them with attention, gain their trust, and then drain their bank accounts before disappearing. His past was littered with broken hearts and empty promises. There was Melissa, a young waitress he'd met in Miami. He'd swept her off her feet with promises of a better life, then vanished with her life savings. And then there was Margaret, a widowed artist from Santa Fe who had fallen for his lies and lost her art studio to his schemes. Each victim bore the scars of his betrayal, their stories chillingly similar. Jamal was a chameleon, adapting his persona to fit his victims' desires. He had an uncanny ability to identify their vulnerabilities and exploit them for his gain. He was a predator in sheep's clothing, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. His encounter with Sandra was not a chance meeting, it was a calculated move in his twisted game. Section 5. Withering under the strain. Sandra's deterioration. After their marriage, Sandra's life took a dark turn. Her once thriving business began to suffer. She was constantly distracted, worried about Jamal's financial woes and his increasingly erratic behavior. He was withdrawn, prone to fits of anger, a stark contrast to the charming man she had fallen for. Her friends noticed the change in her.
Her mind was a storm of anger, guilt, and confusion. She had lost her mother, both in the physical sense and in the moral sense, and now she was left to pick up the pieces. Alicia's relationship with her brothers had always been complicated, but now it was irreparably broken. Caden and Kieran were no longer the innocent boys she had raised. They had been complicit in something dark, something that had shattered the foundation of trust in their family. She couldn't bear to look at them, couldn't bear the weight of their shared guilt. The sight of them reminded her of everything that had gone wrong, of the mother she had trusted and the sons who had betrayed her in ways she couldn't even comprehend. Alicia made a decision that day. She couldn't stay in that house, couldn't pretend that everything would ever be normal again. The bonds that had once tied the family together had been severed, and there was no repairing them. She packed her things, grabbed what little strength she had left, and made the only choice she could. She cut off contact with her brothers, refusing to let the toxic secret that had destroyed their family poison her life any further. But it wasn't just her brothers that Alicia had to walk away from. The weight of what her mother had done hung over her like a dark cloud. How could the woman who had raised her, the woman who had instilled in her a sense of morality, of right and wrong, have done something so unforgivable? How could Vivica, her own mother, have allowed herself to fall into such a twisted relationship with her grandsons? Alicia couldn't reconcile it, couldn't understand how the woman she had looked up to her entire life could have betrayed her in such a way. The betrayal left Alicia grappling with questions she couldn't answer. She felt torn between the love she had once had for her mother and the anger that now consumed her. She wanted to grieve, but she couldn't. Every time she thought of Vivica, all she could see was the scene in that bathroom, the way her mother had looked at her sons, the way the lines between right and wrong had been blurred beyond recognition. It was as though the woman she had known had never existed at all. Alicia's heart was filled with conflict. On one hand, she had lost her mother, and that pain was undeniable. But on the other, she had lost something far more precious, the image of the woman she had trusted, the moral compass that had once guided her life. How could she mourn someone who had betrayed her so deeply? How could she move forward when everything she believed in had been torn apart? The rest of the family, too, would feel the weight of what had happened. Alicia's decision to confront her other siblings, those who had not been part of this, but who would now be dragged into the aftermath, was inevitable. She couldn't keep the secret to herself. She couldn't carry the burden of what her mother had done alone. And so, one by one, she reached out to them, her voice shaking as she revealed the truth that had destroyed her family. The conversations were painful. Her siblings, shocked and horrified by what had happened, could barely comprehend it. They had loved Vivica too. They had seen her as a matriarch, a figure of strength and moral guidance. And now that image had been shattered for them as well. The family that had once been united by love and trust was now fractured, each member struggling to understand how it had all gone so wrong. And so the Evans family was left in ruins. The official investigation may have concluded that Vivica's death was an accident, but the emotional fallout was far more complex. The relationships that had once held them together were broken beyond repair. The family that had once gathered around the same table, that had shared laughter and love, was now divided by guilt, betrayal, and grief. Alicia's heart would never heal completely. The weight of her mother's actions, of her brother's complicity, would remain with her for the rest of her life. She had lost more than just her mother that day. She had lost her sense of family, her sense of trust, and the foundation that had once made her feel safe. And now, as she moved forward, all she could do was try to rebuild. But no matter how far she went, no matter how much time passed, the shadow of what had happened would always linger, a constant reminder of the family that had been destroyed. In the end, it wasn't the police investigation that brought closure. It wasn't the ruling of an accident that made the family feel whole again. It was the slow, painful process of acceptance. Acceptance that some things could never be undone, that some wounds would never heal. And as the Evans family scattered, each member going their own way, one truth remained. The secret that had destroyed them would never be forgotten. Some stories don't end with simple answers. The lines between right and wrong blur until nothing is clear anymore. In this tragic tale of betrayal, desire and despair, the Evans family was left shattered, but the real question remains. Who, if anyone, is truly to blame? Was Vivica Evans a victim of her own loneliness, driven to make choices she never would have considered had her life taken a different path? Or did she willingly step into a darkness she knew was wrong but couldn't resist? Loneliness can be a powerful force. For years, Vivica lived in isolation, the walls of her home closing in around her, her heart aching for the companionship she had lost with the death of her husband. She was vulnerable, her mind clouded by the deep sorrow of years spent alone. But does that justify what happened? Could her loneliness excuse the choices she made with her grandsons, choices that crossed every moral line? Or does it simply explain how far someone can fall when left with nothing but their own despair? The twins, Caden and Kieran, were not innocent either. They were young, yes, but not blind to what was happening. They could see their grandmother's vulnerability. They could feel the shift in the air, and they pushed the boundaries. What started as a playful interaction between family members became something darker, something manipulative. They weren't children. They knew what they were doing. And yet, it's hard to say how much of this was truly their fault. Did they understand the full weight of their actions? Or were they caught up in a dangerous game that spiraled out of control before they could stop it? In this story, the boundaries of morality were stretched thin, twisted by the complex emotions of each person involved. Vivica, a woman who had always lived by the rules, found herself consumed by a desire she couldn't control. The twins, once innocent in her eyes, became the catalysts for her downfall. But who was the real manipulator? Who held the power in this twisted relationship? Was it the boys, exploiting their grandmother's need for love and connection? Or was Vivica the one who set the stage, inviting a temptation she wasn't strong enough to resist? The tragedy of this story doesn't just lie in the fall, in Vivica's death on the stairs. It lies in the psychological scars left behind. Alicia, the daughter who had once trusted her mother, now grapples with the enormity of what has happened. How can she ever reconcile the image of the woman who raised her with the one who betrayed her so deeply? The anger she feels is sharp, overwhelming, but beneath it lies a sorrow that cuts even deeper. She has lost more than a mother. She has lost the foundation of trust she built her life upon. Devon, too, carries the weight of this tragedy. A father, a husband, a man who thought he understood the family he was a part of, now finds himself questioning everything. His sons, once the pride of his life, are now tainted by the choices they've made. How does he move forward? How does he look at them, knowing what they've done, knowing how far they've fallen from the boys he once knew? And yet they are still his sons. The bond of blood, of family, complicates everything. Forgiveness may seem impossible, but the heart has a way of holding on to hope, even when reason tells us to let go. And what of the twins? Caden and Kieran, who were once simply boys on the verge of manhood, now carry the burden of what they've done. Can they truly understand the weight of their actions? Or are they forever marked by the choices they made in the heat of the moment? The scars of this affair will follow them for the rest of their lives. A constant reminder of how easily innocence can be lost, how quickly trust can be shattered. In the end, who is truly to blame? Is there a single person responsible for the unraveling of this family, or is it the sum of all their choices? Can we truly place blame on Vivica alone, or do we have to look at the twins, at the way loneliness and vulnerability intertwine to create something so tragic? And the bigger question lingers. Is there a way forward? Can forgiveness ever be found in the wake of such a betrayal? Or has this family been torn apart forever? Perhaps there are no simple answers. Perhaps in the end, we're left with nothing but the consequences of our choices, the weight of our decisions. And for the Evans family, those consequences are more devastating than they could have ever imagined. In the shadows of every family, there are secrets waiting to be uncovered. In the next episode, we'll explore another tale of betrayal, love, and tragic endings. Another family, another secret, and the question that haunts us all. How far can we fall before there's no way back? If you've been captivated by this story, don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on the next tragic tale. There are always more secrets waiting to be revealed, and more families on the brink of destruction. Join us again, and be a part of unraveling the mysteries that lie hidden in the darkest corners of life. Hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and be the first to uncover the next chilling story of betrayal and heartbreak.
The spark in her eyes replaced by a weary sadness. Sandra's health deteriorated rapidly. She lost weight, her vibrant energy replaced by a constant fatigue. Her doctor attributed it to stress, but her daughter Kira suspected something more sinister. The once strong, independent woman was a shadow of her former self, her spirit crushed under the weight of Jamal's deception. She was trapped, her finances entangled with Jamal's, her life slowly unraveling under his control. He isolated her from her friends and family, convincing her they didn't understand their love. Sandra, her mind clouded by his manipulation and her body weakened by the stress, clung to the remnants of her love, refusing to believe the truth that was staring her in the face. Section 6. A Glimmer of Hope. Kira's unwavering suspicion. Kira had never fully trusted Jamal. Something about his charm felt insincere, his smile too practiced. She noticed how her mother, once so strong and independent, seemed to shrink under his presence. Kira watched as her mother's savings dwindled, her business faltered, and her health declined. She knew she had to act fast. Kira began her own investigation, discreetly digging into Jamal's past. She scoured the internet, searching for any information about him. Her search led her to online forums and news articles, each one painting a more sinister picture of the man her mother had married. The stories sent chills down her spine, confirming her worst fears. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Kira confronted her mother. Sandra, however, was in deep denial, refusing to believe her daughter's accusations. Kira knew she had to tread carefully. She needed concrete evidence, something that would shatter the illusion Jamal had so carefully crafted and force her mother to see the truth. This was a race against time, a fight to save her mother from a predator hiding in plain sight. Section 7. The Long Arm of Justice, A Looming Reckoning. The story of Sandra and Jamal does not end with a neat resolution. It hangs in the balance, a chilling reminder that monsters often lurk beneath charming exteriors. Kira continues her tireless pursuit of justice, determined to expose Jamal for the fraud he is. Will she find the evidence she needs to free her mother from his grasp? The authorities are involved, but Jamal, a master manipulator, covers his tracks well. The investigation is ongoing, a slow and arduous process. The legal system grinds slowly, but Kira holds on to the hope that justice, though delayed, will ultimately be served. Sandra, her health frail, her spirit broken, remains under Jamal's influence. She clings to the remnants of the love she believed they shared, unable to comprehend the depth of his deception. Will she awaken from the fog of manipulation before it's too late? Only time will tell.